Hello, I'm Jonas. Welcome to Not Just AI. And today we're going to talk about some of the underlying mechanics of the current global economic system, why it's disadvantaging you, and why it's going to get worse and harder to solve. So today I'm going to talk a bit about economics. I'm a student from Portugal, Madeira. I'm a student of artificial intelligence, but I've had my share of working in a big consultation company as well in Porto. I've worked for Deloitte for a while, and I've seen firsthand how flatmates of mine had to juggle between two jobs just to be able to afford the city that was Porto and live with the minimum amount of dignity. I have a lot of friends of mine that are leaving that are graduating and that see themselves being squeezed by the current housing crisis and feel like they have to leave the country to try to find better pay elsewhere to be able to eventually maybe afford a house in Portugal. Unfortunately, Portugal is going through one of the worst housing crises in Europe right now. We had the biggest jump of house prices this year since 1988. And from the first quarter of 2024 up until the first quarter of 2025, I think the prices of houses increased by 16.3%. And yeah, it doesn't help that our wages aren't that high as well. Actually, if you search, you can actually find that our wages to house prices ratio is actually one of the worst ones in Europe as well. But of course, this is not a problem that happens only in Portugal, right? It's a problem that's happening everywhere because of the global economy. Actually, in America, a couple months ago, a report came out on how the new age of first-time home buyers on average is 40 years old. So if you're a new home buyer in America, your average age is 40 years. And even Trump, like a couple of days ago, he posted something on Truth Social. It was like a title, Great American President, and then there was his face saying 50 years mortgage below, as if it was a good thing. Did he think that was a good thing? I think he's pretty gone. Just for reference, like if you're 40 years and you're buying a house, on average you're 40 years, then you take a 50-year loan. That means you're going to be 90 by the way that you finish up paying your house. And I think the life expectancy in America is like 80 years. So you're not even expected to be ever able to own your house in America anymore. Yeah, unfortunately, this is happening at a time where productivity has never been higher, right? Like productivity for worker is as high as it has ever been, but it's not being reflected in the workers' pockets, of course. Like, it's harder for us to buy houses, it's harder for us to buy groceries. We don't even have more time to spend on our stuff. But if it doesn't end up in our pockets, it ends up in someone else's pockets, of course, and that's like the richest people. And that's why wealth inequality is a major problem and one of the biggest problems today. But to understand that a little better, we need to talk about what is wealth. Because when I speak about wealth, people often think of money and capital, but there's other, even more important types of wealth, like commercial wealth. You know, every hospital, every rail line company, every supermarket, those are all companies or buildings that have owners, and they're all capable of generating wealth for their owners. The easiest way for us to understand this would probably be with housing. Houses are also an asset. For example, if you have a house in a high demand city or even a medium demand city, like somewhere okay, you can rent out that house and earn money from it. And that way you're earning money simply through your assets. And this happens with all kinds of assets, all the ones that I talked about, for example. So there's a group of people in the world that earn their money not through working, but simply through dividends because of the assets and their investments. Uh, yeah, this group of people is, for example, Sonai. It's one of the biggest companies in Portugal. It's the parent company of Continente and Vorten. And I think their biggest shareholder had like 54% of all the shares of the company, and they won about a little over 2 million euros every week. If you are winning 2 million euros every week, it's not very realistic to spend all of that money over the course of 1 week. You can live a very luxurious life, but you're unlikely to spend it all. And what those people end up doing is reinvesting that money, right? If they just keep it in a bank and don't do anything with it, it would eventually devalue because of inflation. So what they essentially have to do is to buy even more assets with that money. It's not out of malicious intent, it's kind of just what has to happen. And what that means is that these rich people are going to be able to buy more and more assets, and it's going to be harder for other people to get into the asset economy. For example, in America, what we have now is almost plurality of people that own assets are these class of people that make money simply off of their riches. So I think it's 10% of the American population that owns 93% of all of the American wealth. Here in Europe, it's not as bad. But if you look at the global scale, it's like 1% of humans that have 95% of all of the wealth of the world. Of course, that's what this means is that you can make two assumptions knowing this. The first one is that it's going to be harder from now on for you and me to buy houses, to buy any kind of asset, really. All assets are being bought off by these people that already have a lot of wealth, and it's becoming harder and harder for me and you and anyone working class to break into the market. So what that means is that houses, because they're part of the assets economy, are going to be harder and harder to get. Of course, that we can put band-aids on the problem. We can like give off subsidies to people that are first-time home buyers, try to help out. But if we don't attack the fundamental problem, the tendency is always for it to get worse. And second off, we can also assume that it's a problem that accelerates. It's not a problem that keeps getting worse linearly, because a person that has a lot of assets gains money from those assets and then has to essentially reinvest that money into getting more assets. Those extra assets are going to make him or her get even more money. That in turn will generate even more assets. So it's an exponential curve. It doesn't grow linearly, it grows exponentially. So we can expect this problem to accelerate in the future. Of course, that I think we can do something about this. This is the reason essentially why the problem is going to get worse, but we can do something about it, and essentially it would have to be through a sensible taxation policy, through taxing wealth and not work. Essentially, yeah, the problem with taxing wealth right now or ever is that it's very hard to quantify wealth, it's very hard to track wealth. If you have a country that starts increasing wealth taxation, people that have money can always run to another country. There's always an offshore or a tax haven just around the corner for them. But of course, I think there are ways that we can make this better either way. There are kinds of assets that aren't that mobile. For example, houses are one of them. Like if someone buys a bunch of Portuguese houses, there is no easy way for them to grab those houses and take them out of Portugal, right? Another good way would be through inheritance tax. Inheritance is a tax that doesn't chase off rich people as easily because it's not imminent, right? And it would essentially mean one of the biggest wealth transfers from the top to everyone else if well-crafted wealth tax was enacted. That's part of the reason why Tokyo, for example, the Japanese city, is able to keep lower house prices, because they have such a high wealth tax, such a high inheritance tax on house ownership. But yeah, if you are really interested in the economics aspect of our current world, how wealth inequality is affecting it and it's going to affect it in the future, there's a really good YouTuber that's called Gary Stevenson's. He talks a lot about these problems. His channel name is Gary's Economics. I really think you should check it out if you are interested in this. If you do, leave a comment and maybe say hi for me. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And I'll see you in 1 week or two. Thank you.